list of sponsors. Where'd they go, bud?
I don't know, though.
Give me a second. S2F, start to finish. Cover all kinds of different races throughout the country. Another streaming service.
I'm just letting you struggle.
I appreciate that, bud.
Mount Tabor Cabinetry out in PA.
Out in PA.
Morning Sun
Morning
Marketplace out in PA.
Houston Speedway in Brandon. Mother's Day's around the corner.
Hero Haven.
Hero Haven. Fulkins Brothers Trucking. There's one more in here we're forgetting, bud.
Well, we got Snow.
Yep, can't forget old Snow.
Lumberjack, or Lumber Lounge, Lumberjack.
Lumberjack.
Snow is a lumberjack.
Don't worry about us. We'll get this all dialed in here in just a minute. I'm going to keep looking, though.
Don't forget about your boy Mount Tabor.
That's right.
Yeah, we don't want to forget Chris. He'll give us all kinds of help.
Absolutely.
We'd never hear the end of that.
That's
Good thing we got you on. Hey, there it is, bud. Found it. Turn 2 Lodge. Turn 2 Lodge in Knoxville. That was the one we were forgetting.
Absolutely.
My Race Pass. Did we say that one?
Nope.
Okay, My Race Pass. I think we got them now.
All right.
Hey, look at us go. That's what we talked about being organized, Chris.
All right.
That's it. Real nice. Real nice.
Here we go with the actual podcast part of it. Hey, we're at Hoagie's Garage Stove, and we're lucky.
Oh, and
we got the Bug Man on tonight. Do you know who the Bug Man is?
I believe you told me who we were having on, but I forgot the Bugman part. But yeah, we got Chris Frank on tonight.
Yeah. Is it actually Bugman or what is it, Chris?
Yeah, no, probably I'd say just post-COVID there, I actually started doing pest control through my in-laws business that my wife was helping to run at the time. And a couple of our friends started just bringing that up, and it kind of stuck. And then anybody that heard it used it, and it kind of rolled from there. So we just stuck with it, and it's been pretty much my calling card here for probably the last 2 years since the business really got moving.
So do they use that one or kind of a big deal, or what was that saying?
Oh, I get them all. I get them all. So it just depends on who you ask. It depends on who you ask.
Oh man!
I better look make sure this is playing for us, bud.
Yeah, you better make sure that we're on our high-tech selves here.
Yeah, we're well organized, man. I tell you.
Let's you just raced at BAPS, didn't you?
Yeah, we were there on Sunday.
Yeah, how did that go? Kind of give us a rundown of how that race went.
That went pretty good. Really nothing to write home about, but accomplished kind of what I wanted to. I had gotten another car and another 410 to start this year, and so far I had it kind of two attempts at Lincoln, I'd call it. A couple of weeks ago we were there, and I ended up having some junk in the fuel. It actually ended up being, I think my barrel valve lines got eaten up inside a little bit. The motor that I got had sat for a little while, and I think the lines kind of went bad. Packed a couple nozzles shut. So then actually this past Saturday we went back to Lincoln. Had a couple other little hiccups there, but was able to kind of diagnose stuff through the end of the night, get it running. So my back show here on Sunday was actually my first full race with this one without any hiccups in the deal. So it was nice. Unfortunately there, you do draw a number, and all it does is put you into a group. So when you get there, you draw, and say the first, third of the numbers goes into one heat race and so on and so forth. So then you're just racing against your group. So of course I pulled a 3, which didn't help me at all. It just put me in the first group. We were out on kind of an early greasy racetrack, and I was in the first set. I think the whole second set of our heat race was faster than the whole first set. I mean, it was one of those things. I think it was, just bad luck on that side of it. But started 7th, finished 7th in the heat race. Had to run to B. Made it there. I think we started 20th or 22nd, and I ended up 16th. So just made all the laps, made sure everything went through all right. The car was responding to changes. The motor definitely had a lot more ponies to it than my other one, so I was getting used to that. But just got through the whole day without anything kind of going amiss, and it was not a terrible one at the end of it.
Yeah.
Because when we had you on a while back, a year or two ago, whatever that was, then you were still doing the 358s, right?
Yeah, actually, last year I kind of did a little half and half. It was probably like I could say like 2/3 to a third with the 410, and kind of dipping in on that a little bit. But then till we got through about the summer there, I had lined a guy up through my speed shop that built that with Handmakers and just kind of started shopping that motor around, letting people know that it was going to be available come the end of the year, and I had a buyer for it almost immediately, which was nice there. So, my plan was to get this second 410. That way I could try to run, more or less a full season doing one a weekend. It ends up being about 25, 30 shows, is what I was shooting for basically. Between the two of them, I should be able to do that this year and just kind of see how it goes.
So here's a really dumb question. Is it just more fun to say 358 than a 360, or what's the difference between a 358 and a 360? It can't really be the two numbers.
No, and most of the time, just the cubic inch there. Even mine, when you get big on bore size, I think the variant when they actually pump them for cubic inch, I think you can be up to like 360 and a half is the tolerance for us. The 358s I would say was kind of like the predecessor to any of the 305 stuff back in the day. Central Pennsylvania obviously being a huge sprint car hotbed and always has been. The 410 shit was always expensive, even back in the day. So some guys got together and just did a full steel, limited motor, like a 350 with steel heads. They used to have to be stock. There was a series, it was called Cars. It was KARS. And that was the 358 series for years. That's actually what I grew up watching. A lot of the people that I grew up with were 358 guys, and some of my dad's friends and stuff like that racing at Lincoln. That's kind of where we always were there with a lot of them. It was eventually so popular that they were getting 50-ish cars of those. They started doing more races. They had like a series. They raced at Williamsburg. They raced at Lincoln. At one point, they started to open up the head rules. Now they're ported going over everything else. And now even this year, it used to have to be all steel. They were cast iron head, cast iron block. Now they're starting to allow aluminum heads, but it's strictly 23 degree. You can't do any of the ASCS Brodix stuff. And a lot of guys think when what's really the difference between a 360 and a 358, but we're considerable difference in money, I would say. Has to be flat pistons, everything else. You can really, some of these 360 motors, I think, at least in one of the big shops around here, I talking to them, I just asked, I actually go over and spray for the guy, and he had mentioned he was trying to talk a customer out of getting a brand new 360 to just get a 410. And I was like, what's really the difference when you're looking at brand new like that? And he said it was less than, I think he said $10,000 to have something you could run at Knoxville, basically. Oh, damn. So, and I know 360s pay a little bit, and there's some travel and everything else. I think the longevity's there, and that was like the 358s. You could run a pretty decent season on a 358 if you really pushed in some of the smaller tracks and stuff. You could probably run 22, 25 races on a motor without a freshen.
Sure.
But the 360s are really pushing it. There's probably 360s that have more horsepower than my little 410, I think, at that point. But, your steel rockers, you got a ton of lift, you got a ton of compression, and it's probably getting rebuilt a lot sooner than some of those. But, the 358 stuff, like I said, it's 23 degree head. As far as some of the lift and some of that stuff, I don't know some of the technicalities of what they really try to go on there, but you can have a dart block. It's basically just, it was a steel 410 more or less, but with 23 degree heads and stuff without getting too crazy on, putting dome pistons in it and a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah. We talked with some guys out in California a while back, and, they're big 360 out there. They're also with the NARC, the big 410, but, I really didn't understand, why have the two classes or whatever. And they were just saying they couldn't afford to have that many 410 shows. And I'm like, but the 360 is costing you just as much as the 410. So,
but the track doesn't have to pay as much.
Yeah,
is what I think is what they were getting at. Because for some reason the 360s don't get paid as much.
Yeah,
and they're paying 95% of what a 410 motor costs, or 90% of it. So,
well, that's just it. Yeah, and that's the craziest part to me when you really look at some of the numbers and stuff. I think it was 60 and change or so for a 360, and I think you were like 70, 72 for a brand new ready to rock 410, and it's like, yeah, I wouldn't spend the money on it, to be honest, to go 360 racing. And plus, that's the thing, just Central Pennsylvania being so hammered with racing, and that's just it. I mean, like I think I told you guys before, I'm about it's 15 minutes to Williamsburg from my house, 20 to Lincoln, and I can be at Babs in 10. There's so many options. There's so many different things. There's so many guys with race cars here, and, having so many local classes. We even have a thing called a Sportsman, and it looks like a sprint car without a front wing, but it actually has box tube in the bottom of it. They're a little bit heavier. They run carbureted 358s, and there's a whole slew of those over there at Susquehanna or Baps. And then they even run them wingless as well. So there's a whole lot of different race car stuff in this area just alone.
Yeah, I know you don't have to go very far. I was out there last year. I went out to the Weichert Memorial with Steve, and yeah, you don't have to travel too far to go to tracks. We went to the Grove and Port Royal, and yeah, it's really cool. Now, do you run Port at all? I got to ask that because I didn't see you there last year.
I made one attempt last year.
What's that?
We went up. There was a day show at the end of the year last year. I can't remember what it was or what it entailed, but even just taking the green in the heat race, it's about as far as I made it. I ended up getting hit in the front end and knocked my drag link off, and I was upside down before we even got to take a lap out there. So that kind of stunk. But
welcome to Port.
Well, that was it. It was. I thought with the day show I'd be a little bit safer, but that's just it. I mean, between there and Selinsgrove, it's just one of those places like you're never just going to wreck a little if it's going to happen.
The speed is high.
Yeah, they race a ton different than what Lincoln or the Grove does down here. It's a different setup, and I did try some different stuff. We never really got to see how it's sorted out, but it's one of those things too. Like I said, I'm so close to everything down, Lincoln and the Grove way, where it sounds dumb to say it, and a lot of guys will probably laugh at this, but it's like, with the trailer, I'm probably an hour and 20 minutes from Port. It's like, why the hell would I drive the whole way up there?
Yeah.
So,
most people are like, hour and 20 minutes. Shit, that's a short trip. But yeah.
Well, I'd say, I hate to throw that around with you guys out there. And I know there's a lot of guys that travel probably several hours a weekend just to get places. But, to try to commit, I mean, really to go up there every once in a while, I don't feel is worth it, to make that one or two appearance. Unless you get really lucky and go good, you almost have to commit and run 2-3 weeks in a row up there. Even just the racing itself's different. Maybe that's part of the whole thing and why I ended up on my head there. I just, going in there with a Lincoln Williams Grove mentality on the start, I got my front end knocked out and didn't even get to take more than a green in the heat race. So It's like, you see guys up there a lot of times too. It's you're either, all or nothing kind of thing. And that's unfortunately the way it is. And some of those guys, I mean, you see when a Port Royal guy comes to the Grove, it's like, what the hell's he doing? And it's just the difference in how those places race. And I'm sure same thing, like you get out there, some of the small tracks and guys that go to Knoxville and vice versa. It's a big culture shock, I think. And,
oh yeah.
If you can't commit to go up there and make that your deal, I mean, in my opinion, it's not worth it for me to go up there once or twice a year. I think it'd just be silly. Unless I could commit to go straight, every Saturday for a month or something like that, and really put in the time to try to get good there.
Yeah,
but
to get it figured out for yourself anyhow.
Yeah, you can watch videos all you want, but that's one of the things too. I mean, to look at that place on TV versus actually being on the racetrack and running it's definitely different. And that's just, and that's any racetrack for anybody. And you could watch all the video you want, and you kind of see where guys go and move around, but to get there and live it and breathe it every weekend, it definitely races a lot different than the other tracks we have down here.
Well, they've even been talking about that quite a bit, like with the high limits even this year. I think the Outlaws too are going new places that they haven't been to in years. So a lot of the newer teams don't even have a notebook for them, you could say. So they're saying it'll be a struggle for some of them, or they're thinking it might be,
No.
But what, they're even going back to Canada this year, I believe. They haven't been there for a long time.
If us and Canada are getting along
well,
together
yeah,
a little bit better,
if they're allowed to cross the border or not, that's a whole other story. But we ain't
Oh,
getting into
yeah.
politics. This is a racing
Well,
show.
we had a little bit of Canada down here. I believe it was Glenn Steyer was actually at Lincoln here Saturday, and then I think he was at Babs on Sunday, so he was down. So that was cool with the old Oshweekon car.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. we used to get Thomas Kennedy. The Kennedys would come down from Canada and race Huset's and stuff, but then they kind of got out of racing now.
Yep.
But so yeah, we've had them down here before too. So
in case the guys don't know a lot of your history, give us a little rundown. How did you get started? Just kind of go through to the point of where you are now.
Basically, I've been racing since I think the summer I turned 13 with go-karts. Another thing that was just polluted down through here. There's a lot of racing, but a couple of local racetracks here. I ran that till I think I was go-karts like almost 17 years. Basically got to the point where it's like I was going to be 30 and I didn't want to tell people that I raced go-karts anymore. So it was one of the things that it was just kind of like, if you're going to take a stab at it, you don't want to wait forever. And like I said, it kind of grew up, going to the races around here. Had a lot of friends that ran 358s, made some friends in the racing world that were involved in a lot of other stuff, and had some friends that went sprint car racing. So I had actually went and bought a full roller from a friend of mine and was going to go 305 racing because it just seemed the economical way. They were starting to get more popular. The Race Saver stuff was really starting to blow up here at that point. And the guys I bought the car from kept hounding me about buying a 358. And, finally I just kind of joked with him and I'm like, nobody's ever going to buy that for what you want for it. I was like, you should just let me run it. And he let me come down. He called me and the next day and he's like, bring your truck. And, I had bought the car with a big wing on it and stuff like that. At the time we were still running the skinny 3x5 wings on the 358s. He pretty much gave me all the parts that I didn't buy that he had left in the motor, and then kind of sponsored me to get started with all that with the racing. And that's where I kind of started with the 358. Obviously ran that about, I guess, basically would have been 10 years up to this point. And then, I've won at Lincoln. I've won at the Grove with the 358. We've done well in like the summer series this past year. I was second in that. I think fifth at the Grove in points, and been a pretty consistent car with that. I don't want to say we ever really dominated or did anything real crazy, but a pretty good team with the 358s. And, once again, just didn't want to wait forever to try it. And I kind of was wanting to dip a toe in. I actually was looking at maybe getting like a 12 head or just a smaller 410 to mess around, and kind of lucked into this little All Pro that I got. Bought it in pieces. Gary Hammaker, that this has done my 358 for the last few years, kind of forcibly made him go through it. He really doesn't do any 410 stuff, and he really hates having to do it. So he slapped it together, and honestly, I just surprised myself. It went a lot better than I anticipated, and that was the same thing even going into last year. Had some top 5 runs. Had a second and a third up at Clinton County. Just some more impressive runs than I thought I could do. Now, obviously I'm not hitting time trial shows and going to high limit and all the outlaw stuff, but I'm pretty content doing Friday, Saturday night stuff. And that's what I've enjoyed. Basically just kind of through last year, it was like, I thought I could go back and forth, but there was just enough difference between the setups. And, the week that I could run, or a couple weeks in a row, run the 410, or then you'd switch back to the 358 and, shock travel was different, or, hey, I should have had a half a turn out instead of a whole turn, or vice versa. And it was throwing me off a little bit more. And like I said, it went a little too well for what it was. And like I said, when I got the 358 lined up to be able to sell it without really having to advertise it or do all that junk, it was like, I'm just going to make a run at it and see how it goes here. And I bought the second motor, and now we're going to hopefully do close to 25 shows this year. If the rain would cooperate, maybe we'll get some racing done, but, just kind of poke around here, just do some, basically focusing on trying to, put a schedule together around the handicap shows. And that was the thing so far at Lincoln too. I probably could have finished Saturday, but to run another 20 laps on the motor that I had to get another $25 and pass, 2-3 more cars, it was better for me to pull off and keep my handicap low and get, be able to start up front of the inverts next time we come back. So
sure.
Just trying to race smart, race where we can, hopefully this rain quits and it starts to slick up a little bit, because that seems to be when I'm a little bit better, when it's not so fast. So, just kind of rolling with it this year. If it's going to rain Friday, we might just go Saturday, and vice versa, depending on the plan and everything else. I think I'm going to try to go back out to Lernerville a few times out there, a little bit Western Pennsylvania racing. I think that was a lot of fun. We had some decent success out there for the couple of times I got to go there too. So, just kind of do the regular Friday and Saturday night stuff around here, and see what we can do.
Yeah, you brought up, not racing with the high limits or with the outlaws. I just think there's sometimes some of the local guys do some things they don't normally do there, and then it doesn't end up well for you. It ends up costing you a fair amount of money. So I don't think that's all in all a bad decision.
Oh yeah, and I mean you want to chase the glory, and it's funny, and you listen to fans, and they're like, "Oh, are you going to run the National Loop?" And it's like, no, like I'm not. And even some of the Speed Week shows and some of this and that. And I mean, I expected there to be a pretty strong field of cars there on Sunday, but I think the weather and just the way things shook out, some guys didn't stick around. But some of these shows that we've showed up for so far have had 35, 40 couple cars at them. And, that was even Sunday. There was 30 teams there at BAPS. I think 30 or 31 410 teams on Sunday. And, like I said, ended up 16th. I mean, to be in the middle of what was there and, was able to competitively pass some cars, miss some wrecks, just kind of get through the day. It was, I don't want to say I didn't have faith in what I was able to do, obviously spending all the money to go out here and do this kind of stuff. But, in my opinion, to be not very good and still run about mid-pack out of the cars that was there, I was pretty happy with that.
Sure.
In Central PA, I mean, it's tough. It's like trying to run Knoxville on a weekly show. There's some heavy hitting teams, and even the slow guys there aren't slouches. You know what I mean? There's a lot of, good and bad to it. But I mean, it's just one of those things like trying to build your operation, and that's just it. I mean, even Friday, Saturday night racing compared to some of these bigger shows, the whole day's different, the whole process. I would say that's probably my biggest culture shock right now that I'm running into is the timing of the 358 night versus the 410 program. Before we used to get the shitty, slimy hot laps, and we're cleaning the track off for those guys. And then, we're at the end of the night again after all the track's all burned off, running on a, it's going to eat your tires kind of surface. Yeah. Now you're on a much faster surface. You get the track cleaned off for you. You're running the feature before the track slows down, and it's a whole different night of racing compared to what I'm used to.
Yeah, and like you were saying too, the competition in PA is stout. Pretty much every track you go to.
There's no slouches in PA.
No, not very many.
Oh no, and you hear a lot of these guys, and they talk about losing some of the big teams and things like that, and the car owners and stuff, but. I mean, yeah, there's no car owners. There's not a lot of rides to be had like there used to be, when it was the Hamilton 77 and the Haas, 88, some of those type of cars and things like that. There's still some teams and some cars like that. But in all reality, like, in my opinion, everybody else had to step up to be able to run with those guys.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have like a Gary Kaufman, Danny Dietrich scenario. Like, it's not some big ride to be had or anything else, but I mean, he can go out there and run with any of those teams. They can beat the Outlaws. They can do this. They can do that. Even now Anthony Macri's team and the stuff that they have. They've traveled and really gotten to a national level and being competitive. But I mean, even the local Friday, Saturday night guys around here. I mean, I'm good friends with Rick Lefevre and all them. And if you ever had a chance to go down and see what they really had in the shop and what they have there at their disposal, like they're not just some like, well, we're going to Lincoln tonight and we'll see how it goes. Like they're pretty serious operation.
Sure.
There's a lot of really good talent there. I mean, they got a whole team of experienced guys, and with the driver and stuff they brought on, the guys that came with them. I mean, there's so much experience, and I think that's a thing a lot of people don't know sometimes, and something I even learned, like the crew chiefs and the people behind the scenes that don't really ever get some of the glory and some of that information that, everybody just thinks it's all up to the driver or somebody like it used to be like a Brian Monteith just going up and hammering the wall and getting stuff done. But if the car didn't operate, like they weren't going to look that good, basically.
Yeah.
So,
well, you can take any of your top drivers. You can take Gravel, Brad Sweet, whoever you want to, stick them in a crappy car. They ain't going to win. They're good enough to make it a respectable car, maybe, but they're not going to win with it very often. So it's a whole team operation.
Oh yeah, no, and that's even seen in here just in recent times. I think that little bit when Tyler Courtney was out and some of those guys and switching cars and people were hopping in rides, it's like it was not the same deal, and it was just a wrench change or a driver change, and it really shook some stuff up. But that's my thing, and racing around here, and it's intimidating, and there's a lot of guys like I said, like even some of these smaller teams that just have the right people in place to be dangerous with what they have.
Sure.
There's really no slouches, and I was talking to a guy there at the payout window when we got out on Sunday. He was a little disappointed that he didn't make the show, and yeah, there was only 30 cars, but it's like I told him, I'm like, in all reality, like there weren't really any bad cars here. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody was out there like running their freaking motor out of time or something like that, or had flat tires and that kind of junk. Like everybody's pretty well set to kill around here all the time, and that's the thing even there too. I mean, we were back there racing for, I think I got, like I said, up to 16th, but I mean, the way I had to race and had to run the car there on Sunday, it was like you were battling for the win just to maintain and keep where you were at. I mean,
Sure.
it's, I'm not gonna lie, like I was after half a day Saturday and then running on Sunday, like my arms were tired. Like you were hustling pretty hard compared to what some of the 358 racing is for sure.
Yeah.
A little bit off the wall here, but I was listening to Wing Nation today. They had Don Kreitz on there because he won one. What did he win? Lincoln this past week.
They had Ryan Smith in the car,
Yeah.
and they won at Fort Royal last
Fort
Saturday.
Royal. There we go. But anyways, then they were talking about old Davy Brown, the
Yep.
crew chief, and Don thought that he has won a feature as a crew chief like every year since like the 50s or something. I thought he said or something. It was a crazy number. But he was just talking about he's been around so long, and they've been traveling a little bit without him. So when they come back to race in PA, Davey didn't want to step on Don's toes, because Don had been doing. And Don said, "I just handed him the wrenches and walked away." He says, "I ain't gonna argue with him, man." Or whatever,
Yep.
But I thought it was really neat, the respect them two have for each other, and that's what you talk about, teams being together for so long, which makes them better too. That's one of the things they keep saying about gravel right now, that they've got that same core guys now for how many years, and they're really starting to click together.
Oh yeah, no, I couldn't say more about Dave Brown and what those guys did, even going back to the Lance Deweese domination era, and just what they were able to do with that car. And that's the thing. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not guys that hustle the shit out of these cars and can really drive up against the wall, but like when you could hop in that car, or just throw random guys in there like Christopher Bell and Pittman, and Ryan Smith goes here and wins at Port against 35 cars that are, like I said, no slouches.
Yep.
To hop in that Cadillac and just go out for a Sunday drive, like that's the kind of stuff that I like. I mean, being able to kind of outsmart people and just really have a car that you don't need to absolutely run the guts out of and be, smashing your beadlock off against the wall to make speed. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I think is really neat. And that's where I try to, I enjoy working on my car. Like I make all my setup decisions and stuff, and it's frustrating as much as it is rewarding sometimes, but it's neat to learn and try to get it.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, bud. I liked what you said earlier too, how you ran mid pack, but you had passed some cars, and you were happy with that. But we had somebody on, I can't never remember anything, but I know they said racing is terribly frustrating, if I remember this all correctly. But he said you need to find something positive from every night, and there usually is something positive, even if all you had was good hot laps. But that's what you got to try and focus on. Say you got dumped in the heat race at Port last year or whatever. Yeah. That sucks. But you need to find something positive if you can, or you'll go nuts.
Oh yeah, no, and that's there's definitely nothing to be said that's more frustrating than just the money that you put into it when you go and you have a bad night. But like I said, that the first two nights that I had this thing out, the very first night, nobody's really fault, but like this motor that I bought, I think the guys had it almost 2 years and only ran it 5 or 6 times.
Sure.
And, maybe, that lack of experience on my part. I mean, up until I had this other 410, I've only had that 358 motor for 10 years. I never had any other motors. That was the same block, same combination of most of those parts that I had for 10 years, and just never would have thought to take apart, the injection and really clean all that stuff out. But, plugged a couple nozzles, and then, actually on Saturday there to start the motor and stuff, I had tried to clean the fuel system out here. I missed tightening a fitting the whole way, and I actually was sucking some air when we tried to just start the motor. And honestly, like, I had my fingers crossed, for 2 weeks now, till we missed a weekend, that I didn't hurt this motor when we ran it low on fuel and had those nozzles clogged. And here, when we went to do engine starts, it would fire, but it wouldn't stay running because it's sucking air.
You're like, oh crap.
Well, yeah. I mean, you want to talk about like a moment where you just want to throw up in your helmet. We pushed off down the front stretch, and I went past the flag stand, and it sounded like every cylinder was hitting, and I'm like, oh, thank God, And then it just like it went boop, 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 and I came to a stop going into turn one, and it was just like,
Got
just
that little taste in the back of your throat.
yeah, that was a pretty disgusting moment, but thankfully, I mean, and my crew guys are good, but they're not experienced with sprint car stuff. They do what I pretty much tell them to do, but they're actually, Rick Lefevre came down. He was at my trailer till we came back in. I tried to fire it one more time, the same thing. And he's like, I don't think you're getting fuel or you got air. And we actually blew air into the tank, and then all of a sudden I had fuel gushing out the side of the car right past my shutoff valve at my inline filter. It was not tight the whole way. So we got the car fired, and that was the thing. Like Saturday was nothing to write home about by any means, but we made sure the motor ran. I got all the stuff out of the fuel system. That was good. And like I said, Sunday, I made all the laps because we had to run the B main, but I ran the whole feature and finished. We were on the lead lap, that kind of stuff, and beat some cars that you kind of look at. And that's the thing. Like when you're running a 305 or a 360 and you watch some of these races, you're like, oh my God, that guy's so slow, I could beat him. You know what I mean? And then you go out there and that guy's just dogging the shit out of you, and you're having trouble getting by him, or he's passing you, and it's like it's a whole different world. And that's I could even say, I'm sure there's a bunch of people that are like, oh yeah, Chris Frank got a 410. I could go out there and beat him, and it's like, hey, go get one.
There's a lot of them retired Knoxville champions sitting in the stands all the time and stuff.
At least you got one. But we have Chris Frank on from PA. Chris, you're double zeros. How the heck? What's the story? There's got to be something besides double zeros.
So just going back, I'll say I was a NASCAR fan when NASCAR was actually worth watching. I kind of got into that just by chance with my dad and stuff growing up. We saw a couple races, and he's like, do you want to go? And we went. Well, then I started watching it on TV, and actually, like, I think, early 90s up through the early 2000s, mid 2000s, we were pretty hard into that, even after we started with racing karts and stuff. But, early 90s and things like that, I think it was probably like 95, 96. I discovered that there was like the Busch series. So there's like a whole nother group of cars, and it wasn't just Winston Cup. I had no idea. And it was actually Buckshot Jones. I had never encountered anything like that. And it was just interesting to me that why would you have 2 zeros? That just always stuck with me ever since before we even ran karts. I thought that was the neatest thing. And then of course you learn about it coming into dirt track racing. There's quite a few guys around here, like late models. There was Booper Bear and some different people that had that number, but, that just always stuck with me. I thought that was odd, and I liked it. And even from the time we started with karts, that's literally just always been my number.
I gotta ask, you said Booper Bear had that number?
Yeah.
Is that a real name, or is that his nickname?
Booper obviously was probably a nickname, but his last name was Bear, B-A-R-E, and it was a singer around here and some of that stuff. There was a couple different guys. I can't think of the gentleman's name. They actually ran 360 around here for a while, and I know Kevin Naus drove it. Was one of the last guys that drove for him. He was an owner. He still comes in the pits every once in a while, and I'll see him at the back of the car, and he comments about the number, and then he just kind of walks off. I can't think of his name right now, but he owned a 00 car for a long time. It's basically, for me, it's going back to NASCAR with that Buckshot Jones when he ran, and they made it to Cup for a little bit and everything else, and I just thought that was the neatest thing. I'd never seen that before on a race car, so I thought that was cool.
Now I got to throw something out here. I did go to my second NASCAR race here a couple weekends ago out in Vegas, and I will have to say that I had an absolute blast at the race.
But there's a good reason.
Well, at the same time, Paul Silva had hooked us up with pit passes, so we got to like stand by the pit boxes and stuff. I mean, we had the all access type thing. So
don't say we. It wasn't me. It was you and Steve Folkens and your wife Ann.
I know, but that's a we.
Yeah.
And that was an absolute blast. That's going to make it virtually impossible to sit in the stands ever again for one of them. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, no, that's you see so much more, and that's like the people that get to come in the pits and do stuff here and experience it. I think the social media aspect and like even just with Billy Dietrich and doing the videos, so you kind of get to see what really goes on versus
Yep.
that sitting in the stands mentality. But they used to just do where they had those tours back in the day, and you could go in and they basically put a pit pass on you, and it's almost like you were on a kindergarten field trip. They all but had a rope, and everybody had to hang on to it. And you walk through the pits. And I'll never forget it. I bet you this was 94, 95. We were at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and we went in. My dad somehow wiggled into getting these tickets. We drive from Pennsylvania on a Friday down to Atlanta, Georgia, and whatever car he had, he was a car dealer, and we'd go, find a ticket scalper and buy tickets. Well, this guy had these passes, and we got to go on this pit tour. And I'll never forget it because there was this big old lady, and she had like the camera around her neck, the suntan lotion on her nose, like she was so touristy. It was terrible. And she walked super slow. And they actually took us down onto where they did the pre-check. They rolled them through that bay of the garage. They had to put the templates on. They're checking all this stuff. And I could even tell you, she was standing there. I don't even know what she was taking pictures of, but she wandered out in front of the bay where they were rolling the cars through. And I actually still have a picture of the car, like a little Polaroid picture somewhere. It was when Robbie Gordon drove the Burger King car, and it was number 14. She was standing there in front of it, and the crew guys were actually catching shit. The tech guy was telling them to go back and change stuff, and they're like, it's fine. And he's like, you're not racing this car. And I'm watching. Well, the car started to roll away when they were getting the 1-2 from the tech inspector, and this lady was just standing there, and it just rolled up and bumped her in the back. But she was so big, it was so funny. She like rolled forward. I don't even think she actually fell. She just kind of rolled onto her belly. And everybody came running up, and the crew guys were looking at the car to make sure she didn't dent the car. People were trying to help her up. And there was all this commotion, and my dad's like, let's get the hell out of here. And we walked off, and we were in the pits. I met Jimmy Spencer. We were up, right beside, I think at the time Ernie Irvin was back in the 28 car. Maybe it might have even been the 8. No, it wasn't the 88. I forget how it worked out, but we were just in there shooting the shit and nobody bothered us.
Yep.
But we got stuck in the infield. We actually had seats in the stands, and they were closing the gate at the flag stand. We were running across the infield when they were doing the national anthem to go to our seats, or we'd have been stuck in the pits the whole time. Like that was awesome. That was a really fun racing thing with my dad before we ever actually got racing.
That's awesome.
No, that's
cool. Awesome. I gotta ask you, is I don't know how to say this word. Is it Selinsgrove?
Selinsgrove.
Selinsgrove. Yep.
Is it running? Is it not running? What's the story out there with that track?
Yeah, they're supposed to start. I think they actually might have even had a testing tune tonight, if I'm not mistaken. New management kind of took it over. Nothing really, I think, physically with the racetrack any different aside from just trying to clean it up, kind of get some stuff into it. I know the previous occupant there and whatever else went on, they tried to get it going and never really took a swing with it. I guess that, to my understanding, the people that are involved now, it's kind of like a late model crowd of people, which that was always kind of a late model track too. But, they're supposed to have, X amount of shows, have a schedule. I think it does start this month up there for them, but, at least anything I've seen or heard on the street and all the social media stuff, it's pretty well to go for the year for what that'll be. And once again, that's another one just with the limited equipment and what I can do. That's probably one I might go up and watch and see how it goes, but definitely hope to see that racetrack succeed and get moving a little bit. We definitely don't need to lose any more around here.
No, we don't need to lose any more anywhere. But
absolutely,
I wanted to ask too. The rest of the world or the nation pretty much canceled all the races. What's it looking like for PA this weekend? I haven't looked at the weather. Now, do you stand a chance of getting some shows in out there, or is it not looking too good?
I was actually talking here today. I stopped over here at Old Racers Used Parts Warehouse to get some tires. I think it's going to be in vain, but it's looking like probably rain starting sometime Thursday here tomorrow, pretty much through Sunday. I guess there's a window on Friday from the mid-morning through the afternoon. I don't think it's supposed to rain till after midnight at one point is what they were saying down there today. I think Danny was talking about it. But I think it's all going to depend on how much rain we get here Thursday into Friday. If that place gets really drenched, I don't know that they'll get it the whole way through.
Yeah.
But I think Saturday, Sunday around here will be a wash for sure.
In other words, we ain't got much to
Son
watch
of a
this
gun.
weekend. We're going to
Yeah.
watch old races.
No.
That sucks. So, why don't you give a quick shout out to your sponsors?
Sure. No, basically just kind of run down the list here real quick. But no, I got Kelly Machine Works. Eric and Alan Miller have been with me for quite a few years. I appreciate those guys. Line Painting LLC, Byway Motors, Big Hill Cider Works. We got JRD Automotive back on the car this year, and actually a couple guys that saw me on Billy's YouTube and stuff. Troy Savage, I have a memoriam sticker on here for his Dakota Savage on my car. He's been helping out this year. Magoo's Motorcycles was another one. Got my boy Nasty Nate on here. Fairco Mechanical, Powder Works, and of course, like I said, that being the bug man, definitely got to thank my wife. We took a run at basically putting me into the business with the pest control stuff a few years back. And, Dowdy's Pest Control is based out of Williamsport, where she's originally from. And then down here in central Pennsylvania, where I'm at, I'm servicing, doing everything and then taking calls and pretty much working on that myself. So, it's been a pretty good run of it, and wouldn't be able to do all this without her for sure. I got GNS Concrete, Lefevre Electric, my good friend Gary Hammaker. I really can't, as much as he doesn't want this credit, I couldn't have got that other motor together and done the 4-ton stuff without him helping me with that. That was a big one. And honestly, I think he's dreading it, but I hope at some point he'll help me with his other motor here too and all that stuff. But Hammaker is just that whole group of guys. Obviously now racing with Doug, he's in the JNS car and all that stuff. But I'd like to give them a little shout out just because if it wouldn't have been for those guys giving me a hand, we actually at one point had another guy doing my 358 and then met Doug, kind of got in there, got them to freshen it. And, there's always people that help you and kind of point you in the right direction. But, they actually took like a vested interest in me and helped me get my program up and kind of running, I would say. Got me to where I'm competitive and where we're at today, that it was actually not completely unfeasible to make a run at being a 410 car.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He did way better with his sponsors than we did, bud, because we couldn't find our damn list. But that's a
I'd be
whole
lying
other
if I said I wasn't in the garage looking at the car and I made a walk around to make sure to forget anybody. But
I don't blame you.
So,
But yeah, you mentioned Billy Dietrich earlier. Some of the YouTube videos, the vlogs he's doing now. He's been branched out into some stuff, but giving him a little shout out. We've had him on the show before. He's done some really neat things. He broke down different parts. Even just mountain tires or tires and different. He shows different things for the people that know nothing about it. That just show up in the stands and don't understand what goes into it. Some of them have been really good videos.
oh yeah, no, and he's actually asked me. We've talked a little bit. He kind of just gets an idea and goes with it. And then of course there's the race weekend ones and whatever else we've talked about. Maybe looking at like, what I did to come from go-karts to this and what was the biggest, scariest thing about it? What was everything on there? They did like the show in the basement, like you said. Now he's doing the vlogs. It really opens it up. And like I said, I think that's neat, especially for just the social media aspect. I mean, everybody wants to be in your business anyway, where a lot of people maybe don't want to share that stuff. It's neat that Bill really puts it out there. And that's just it. I mean, you see, and you guys get it too. And you talk to a lot of people. I mean, you get those fans that are like, oh, go out and just put it on the fence. And it's like, well, that's going to probably cost me a few $1,000s. I got to go to work the next day, then come home and wash what pieces are still good and put it back together. And it's like, really putting it in perspective. And that's just it. I think a lot of people don't realize, and that's just Billy Dietrich himself and his scenario and what they have in that racing family, having Danny as a brother, having old man Dan as his dad. I mean, just that aspect. It's so funny. Like, I could go over there and listen to old man Dan ramble through an old racing story or when he gets bickering with Danny, that's the funniest thing in the world to me. You know, it's their dad, so they hate it and they can't stand it. Where I'm just sitting there like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever. Like, this is what
awesome.
should be on the video.
So how old is Old Man Dan?
He's got to be in his 70s.
So he would be great to have on a podcast.
It would be interesting. It would be interesting.
I see the hesitation there, Chris.
I think he would get the concept, but it's even when Bill tries to do him with the videos, sometimes he is not fascinated by this aspect of it at all. You know, he could care less about the YouTube video and all that. It's like, Bill, come on, we gotta get the gate stupid and you gotta do your video at the racetrack. Get going. You know, he's kind of he's that guy. You know, they're a hardcore racing family, and I just think as neat as it would be to have Old Man Dan as your dad, to have that, like I said, that experience, being able to have somebody that's been there and brought you up the right way and showed you how to do all that stuff, versus like me. Like, honestly, I bought that car from Dean Berkheimer and my friends and brought it home, and I had never so much as laid a wrench on a sprint car. I had a couple friends that had them, but went to the races with them and stuff. But yeah, I brought that car home and knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, versus, Billy and Danny have grown up at the shop and sold the parts, and they've had, just the experience today. I was listening to Danny working with a customer. He had a full steering box and is a little antiquated compared to what some of the new stuff is. But, he knew, like, hey, I got to get him these fittings. We got to move this line. Like, we can make it work, but you're going to need to do this, this, and this.
Sure.
But they've seen all those, people come in and had failures or had the experience of this not working, and now they can go through and fix those problems. And that's where, like, a speed shop like that, I think, is so valuable, because that experience, you know what I mean? Like,
they don't need pictures of stuff. They
No.
know. Tell me what it is, and I can tell you what you need.
That's just it. They've seen it, they've bought it, they've sold it, they've raced it and broke it themselves. You know what I mean? And that's, I think I might have told you guys this before. I had to have this one car and ordered a brand new frame, and was getting it through them. It was a Maxim, and they're like, "You're not going to like it. We don't want to sell it to you." And I'm like, "Take my money and shut up." Like, I'm just telling you. And I didn't make it a full season with that car, and I sold it. So,
God dang it. You hate it when they're right.
Yeah, I still hear about that one. And it's just like, now I buy used cars from Danny, and that's what I run. Like, that's just it. It seemed to work. The first one that I got from him, and I've just kind of stuck with it since then.
Yep. Yeah. Well, what did Danny say? Was it on our show or a different one I watched? But when he wanted to start racing, his dad said that was fine, but you got to build the car.
Yep.
He had to do the whole car himself at like 14 or 16 or something. He was young yet and had to build his own car. So they've been doing it a long time. They have.
Well, that's just it. And that's what's neat about those guys. I mean, the kind of growing up through the glory days of their dad racing, and some of the big leaps and bounds that Central Pennsylvania sprint car racing made, and like you said, I mean, he had rides in some of the premier teams and things like that, had their own cars, and was able to, basically make a living out of it for all three of those guys. Yep. I think that's what's really impressive with the whole thing. And, love him or hate him with Danny and all that stuff. I mean, the experience of what he does and things out here in Central Pennsylvania against some of, like I said, some of the biggest teams, and being able to travel and go out to Ohio and that kind of stuff. It's impressive. And, they're just a solid racing family. That's what they've always done. It's all they know.
Now, I'm trying to remember to a year ago, and then we should probably let you go. But isn't their shop just outside of Biglerville?
Yeah, probably, I'd say maybe
2.
10, 15 minutes off of Route 15.
Yeah, it ain't very far, but I'm going back out there again this year for the Weichert, and I need to get to their shop just to stop in and say hi and thanks for being on our show, and just check it out, bullshit for a little while.
There's no damn sign. The best I can tell you is it's a white mailbox with a little bit of checkered stuff on it. It looks like it would lead you back a lane to some old barn and it'll have nothing in it, but that's back where it actually is.
That's what Steve was telling me. He said, "I'm pretty sure this is it right here." He said, "But it's," he said, "it's not marked, so you kind of got to know where you're going." I guess I'll have to Google it and see if it shows up on Google Maps or something.
I think actually, and I said something to him one time, because I've put in changes for other people with businesses. I think if you look it up, it actually is still under Dietrich Racing.
Okay.
So if you're down that way and if you type in Dietrich Racing, I think it actually comes up out there. That might have I don't know the physical address, but I'm pretty sure it'll come up on there.
I'll be in Biglerville for a day or two, so I ain't too far from it.
No.
Oh, gotcha. And that whole time, Chris Fissel will be asking you questions.
Oh yeah, well we'll run into him again. We hung out for a night or two while we were there last time, so it'll be
Gotcha.
fun.
Gotcha.
It was a damn blast last year. I know that.
Again.
Oh yeah.
I'll be working.
Yeah.
I'll be working until frickin' just gets to go to more races. I tell you what.
Sucks to be a teacher, don't it, bud?
Jesus. You know.
Oh, shoot.
But Chris, we really appreciate you coming on the show. Geez, it's almost been an hour. And
Is it already?
Well, 48.
Yeah.
Well, the phone call is
dang,
53, but the podcast is 48 minutes already. So
Jeepers. Time flies when you're having fun.
it is. So before we let you go, you got any good Kyle Moody stories that we should ask him or anything?
The only thing I could say here now is if you haven't seen it, he's driving a brown race car. And I'll give it to him. There's not another one out here, but it's brown.
It's brown.
That's
all you gotta say. It's brown.
Yeah,
it matches
it's brown.
the dirt.
We'll lead we'll lead into the night with that one with him then. What the
Yep.
hell's the deal with the brown race car?
He's good buddies. There's a graphics guy over here that does wraps and stuff for a lot of the teams, and he actually does T-shirts. He did some of my most recent racing shirts for me, and he's kind of like me. He likes to have stuff different. I've even sat there and argued with him about different stuff that I've done and he's done and everything else. But that was kind of his baby. The traditional Kyle Moody stuff's all black, white with neon orange, but they brought the car to the show, and it's all wrapped and it's flat brown. So you'll have to tell him. Don't let him skimp around on that. He's got a unique look to him this year.
Yeah. And you're kind of always been baby blue with some yellow, but you're like almost all yellow now, aren't you?
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of wanted to do something different with doing the whole all 410 deal. I've always kind of been that lighter blue. The black car I ran the last couple of years, I still like the black car. My one car is still going to be set up that way. And I was like, I've never had, even through go-karts, I never had a yellow car. And there really wasn't anybody to speak of doing it. And then I ended up finding out after I kind of had it in my head that the JNS car was coming back. But of course, that thing's, I'll pick on Doug and tell him he drives a school bus. It's not exactly the same yellow that I do, but I kind of found a color that I liked, and I found another race car that had a scheme similar to what it was with the lettering and stuff. And I was like, I'm gonna go with that. And actually, I took everything, even the body panels and the wing panels. Right now, it's all paint because I wanted it all to match because I'm a little OCD when it comes to some of that stuff. But when we brought it back from the paint shop before I got lettered, I put the body and the tail tank, everything on the car. It was just all yellow sitting in here, and I'm like, "Ooh, I might have effed up here. This is a little too much yellow." But
you can always find you on TV that way.
Absolutely.
well, it was a little too much, and even I told people when we got to Lincoln the first day, people were stopping, and I had the car lettered in, and I got it to the show, and I'm like, yeah, it's okay, but it's like. For me, I really needed to see pictures of it on the track and around other stuff to see if I was going to like it or not. And now it's, all the photographers, people stop all the time, and it seems to be a pretty good hit. And I think I'm going to stick with it here for a little bit. I do like it. So.
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Never hurts to mix her up a little bit. As long as the stop sign doesn't come out when you slow down or something out the side, then you ain't driving a bus yet. So.
Well, like I said, that's the JNS classic school bus there. He's got that yellow cell.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, thanks again. We truly wish you the best. Make sure you give Fizzle a lot of crap. And
oh yeah, any chance I get.
If you can get a word in edgewise with it.
Yeah, go get a few wins.
Now we're gonna get it going here. Like I said, kind of a little bit of growing pains here to start the year, but even for being what I'd say not really 100% there on Sunday, I was pretty happy with how it went. I'm anxious to actually get the other car back out with the motor and the stuff that I've been running to get some laps, and just kind of more or less waiting for it to get a little bit slickened up so I can get a little bit better runs on it. But of course, I'm going to have to get better with the whole thing, and that's kind of my deal this year with the bigger motor and the better car is to try to get up when it's fast out and be able to run a little bit harder. So, I think there's definitely some races that I feel we could go and be a factor, and some things we can be fast at and make a run at it. And then the rest of it's just going to be kind of, getting a full season of this under my belt and really seeing where we stack up at the end of the year. I hate to say I don't have expectations at all, but just kind of seeing where we can run with the one car and get some laps, and then with the other car, at Clinton County, I feel like obviously we've been pretty threatening there. There's a couple nights at Lincoln we had some moments of glory, but we'll see how it shakes out and hopefully have some good runs.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, you take care.
Yes, you guys too. Nice talking with everybody.
Yep.
You
Thanks
bet.
again.
Thanks.
All right, we'll see you guys.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Great job, Chris.
Yes, thank you guys very much. I appreciate having it on there.
You bet. That was.
I was trying not to drop any F-bombs or anything when I'm out in the race shop. It just sort of happens. So I don't even know if I did or not.
I don't remember it. It wasn't bad. We had a few on the show where we were thinking, boy, we should almost have one of them buttons to push.